Hello there, and welcome to Sync Music Matters, a podcast that explores the beautiful relationship between music and the moving image. My name is Jim Hustvedt, and I'm your host on this journey, as each week I seek to understand the people and the process behind the best music in TV, film and games. I'm talking to composers, but I'm also talking to editors, music supervisors, directors, and anyone else who's involved with the synchronous process of pairing audio and visuals. Hello listener, and welcome to another episode of Sync Music Matters. Today I am chatting with 2 times Ivor Novello award-winning and Emmy-nominated composer Ben Salisbury, whose credits include Ex Machina, Devs, Annihilation, Civil War, and most recently Under Salt Marsh. I reckon Ben has probably created some of the most distinctive and innovative scores in modern film and television, and he is well known for his collaboration with Geoff Barrow. And in our conversation, Ben shares insights into his creative process, career journey to date, and the role that collaboration has played in shaping his work. Ben goes into quite a bit of detail about how young composers can start building a career in film and TV music. So if you are an aspiring composer, definitely have a listen. Or if you do know an aspiring composer, be sure to flag it with them. Ben also talks about why collaboration has been such an important part of his work, including his work with Geoff Barrow and with Suvi Eva Akis, with whom he co-composed Under Salt Marsh. And Suvi, if I've butchered your name there, I'm very sorry. We go under the skin of the score for Under Salt Marsh, and specifically chat about how Ben and Suvi made it feel like it was emerging from the landscape, and the landscape being a very dramatic landscape of Wales. And Ben also reveals the very surprising and unlikely source for the show's title music. Now strap in, this is a long episode, partly because Ben and I were just having a good old chinwag, but also because I have interwoven some of the cues and the music that we talk about into the fabric of the podcast. So without further ado, grab yourself a jammy dodger and a cup of tea. Let's chat to Ben. Ben Salisbury, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. Nice to be here.
So I'd like to begin, as I always do, if I could ask, if we cast our minds back to a young Ben growing up on the mean streets of Bristol.
Yeah, the mean streets of middle-class Bishopston. Yeah,
absolutely. If someone had asked you what you would like to be when you grow up, what would you have replied?
Probably 2 very unrealistic dreams. One, a professional cricketer.
Oh.
I was madly into cricket as a kid, and rugby, and football, and all of those things. But cricket was the one I was sort of best at. And I was so mad on the Beatles as a kid, like since whenever I can remember, that I just wanted to not be in the Beatles but have some sort of I just loved reading stories about how Lennon and McCartney wrote songs together, and I really wanted to do that, which was difficult because I was really embarrassed of anyone at school knowing that I played the piano. So that was quite a difficult dream to fulfill if you kept your musical
ambitions.
Under wraps. But yeah, no, those were my 2 things really: music and sport.
Okay, and presumably you played a lot of sport, did you?
I did. I still do badly. I played a lot of cricket. I actually played cricket last night for the first time. I gave up cricket for 25, 30 years because I never got anywhere near making it as a professional. But then I found this over 50s Gloucestershire run 4 over 50s sides, senior sides, and I play for their 4ths. So that gives you some idea of where we're at. But I really enjoy it. But I really hurt my shoulder last night.
I was going to say, when you said that, you sort of your shoulder moved slightly.
I bowled about 4 balls in the nets and then had to abandon it. And then, funnily enough, went to play, because I'd had to give up playing 5-a-side football to do these cricket nets. I went to play 5-a-side football instead. So that makes me sound like really active, but I'm not. I just do 5-a-side football and cricket. That's it. yeah, I do enjoy both of those.
It's good that you can manage the football, because I actually eased off on the football because I was just having issues with my knees, and I'm very scared of going back to it. But it sounds like you can manage the five-a-side, but the cricket's using muscles that haven't been used for a while.
Oh, I just wander around at the back now on five-a-side. But that's actually where me and Geoff Barrow met.
Oh, playing five-a-side
football. Yeah. I've got loads to thank for our terrible five-a-side Monday night old men's football.
Amazing.
And other musicians. It's a ragtag bunch of sort of musicians and some teachers and people involved in music, and it's great. It's a great bunch and really good fun. And it's probably my main sort of release of the week. It's very necessary. Very mindful, especially if you're as bad as I am. You have to concentrate really hard so you can't think about any of the other nonsense that's going on in your life.
Absolutely. I found that with football. It's you literally for 1 hour you are literally concentrating on what's going on around you and on the ball, and you don't think about anything else. And so from that point of view, there's definitely a meditative element to it. We'll go back to the collaborative partnership with Geoff in a bit, but so Beatles, loving the Beatles. But you obviously started playing music quite early. What was your first dalliance?
Piano. So none of my family really played. My parents did. My dad was into singing and stuff, but he didn't play an instrument. But I apparently, as a really young kid, round at someone's house, showed interest in playing their piano and insisted on having piano lessons. And that was from quite a young age. And I play other instruments fairly rubbishly, like lots of composers do, in enough of a way to record them playing wrong notes. And I find it quite interesting playing instruments that you don't know how to play, because it sort of frees you up from. I find a lot of pianist composers get sort of stuck on patterns that they know on the piano, whereas if you let go of that and play something you've got no idea where you're going, it can help. So that was it really, music wise, was piano lessons. And I got a Roland D20 synthesizer when I was about 13, 14, which had a sequencer on it, and I used to make sort of backing tracks for pop songs, Beatles songs again mainly, and write stuff, and heard and really did start getting into film scores at that age as well. John Carpenter and Tangerine Dream and things like that, and trying to emulate that on the piano and with this Roland D20 sequencer synthesizer.
And at what point did that sort of start to develop into a career? Because interesting, I noticed on Spotify you are listed as an artist rather than as a composer. So I think so, yeah. I seem to remember noting that.
I don't know. So I played in. As I said earlier on, I went to a fairly rough and ready school in Bristol, and because I hid the fact that I had piano lessons from anyone. It's so different now. I'm so pleased that my kids, it seems that their generation, it's like, do music, do art, do drama, do whatever you want. No one seems to mind, or maybe it was just me and I was being an idiot, which is quite likely. But I kept that really hidden at school, so I didn't do any academic music at all. I didn't do music O level. I was the last year of O levels. I didn't do music O level. I didn't do music A level because I didn't have music O level. And I was going to go to art college, and my mum, one of the foundation course of the art college said, before the holidays, we're about to go away for holidays, said, you'll have taken your sketchbooks with you, and this will be all you'll be thinking about whilst you're. And I was like, I'm all right at art, but I don't do any of that. And I said this to my mum. She said, well, what you do miss when you're on holiday is music. You come, as soon as you come home, you spend 2 hours in front of the piano. And she just put the idea in my head, really. I'd always really thought of it as just a hobby, something I was really into. And it took my mum pointing out to me, well, it's the thing you're most into. Why don't you, if you're going to go to university, why don't you study the thing? Forget about careers for now. Just study the thing that you enjoy the most. So I did music A level at night school, and applied for the few universities that would have me without having done any academic music, on the promise that I might have it by the time it comes around. And I went to Newcastle University and did a fairly straightforward music degree, which I was way out of my depth for when I first got there, because I didn't have any of that background that most people who do university degrees have, of like playing in youth orchestras, and I didn't even know the names of composers. I really, I felt so far out of my depth. But there was a recording studio there, and pretty state of the art really at that time. And there was only me and one other guy on the course who used it, and so we had the run of it to ourselves with early samplers and digital stuff. And it's more or less self-taught, or he was really good actually. He taught me loads of stuff in the studio, and we just messed around in that. And then and I had always been into film, massively. So I did an MA in film music, music for film and TV, and that's sort of where I got started.
And so how did that progression go then? So you finish your MA, you come out of school.
Yeah. So I went travelling for a bit, but I had this MA to come back to, and in Bournemouth, and it was a really good course at the time. It was one of the first. There were lots of them now, I think. I've done some helping out on one at the National Film and TV School, and I mentor a couple of their students and stuff. And they sound really good, those courses. But back then, which is a long time ago, I think that the Bournemouth one was one of the only ones around, and it was really good. There was only 8 of us, and we had our own workstations and stuff. And my big sort of break there was we were all assigned to do some of the student films that were being made in and around, either from the Bournemouth University itself, or there was the Poole College of Art, and they had a very good film course. And I got picked by one of the directors. We did, professionally sort of handed out show reels, and he picked me to do the music for his graduate film, which was a really accomplished graduate film, and ended up winning. It was some sort of section of the British Short Film Festival, and got broadcast on Channel 4. And he was a guy called Miguel Sapochnik, who is now probably the most, it depends what metric you use, but probably the most decorated TV director in the world, in that he directed the Battle of the Bastards episode of Game of Thrones, and so he won however many Emmys. And I've stayed really in touch with him a lot. I ended up, when I graduated, the short film I did with him helped get me work, because I literally had a broadcast credit. My dad worked at the Natural History Unit in Bristol, where I found myself based, and he wasn't able to give me a job, but he was able to tell me, right, that person is looking for music, send them a tape now, or this is in production, or give me, and that was absolutely invaluable. And it's so, I find it's so tough it was tough even then. I think it's really tough now on young people coming out of college who don't have, that little inroad I had with my dad. I mean, I had to, obviously, like any inroads, you have to then take advantage of it. But
sure.
The first actual commission I got was a BBC Natural World called Africa's Forgotten Elephants. And I literally heard from my dad that they were looking for a composer. And probably, if I'm being honest, the fact that the director probably, had bucket loads of tapes. Back then it was literally VHS tapes, and you were sending out. But mine probably got listened to because the director would have known my dad, and then that was a lucky part. And then he was literally looking for music exactly like the music I'd done for Miguel's short film, and he used that as temp music in his Natural World, and was able to say to the head of the department and the execs, this is someone who's never been commissioned before, but this is his music. And so even then, I had to do a demo run of the music I was going to actually write for the film, and then I got the job. And that, as you know as well, once you've crossed that hurdle, it's that catch-22 situation, isn't it? It's like, I'd love to write music for films. Okay, well, show us something you've written for films. And
I haven't written for a film, so then I haven't got the music. It's like chicken and egg.
So that was the main thing that doing that MA did, and it is the main thing I say to, and I'm sure you do the same thing, to young people asking advice, is somehow find a way to write music for some film of some sort, so you've got something to show, even if it's just nick some adverts off the telly and do your own version of it, or so that was the invaluable thing of doing and then if you do get a job, that first Natural World I spent all the budget. I think I hardly made any money because I recorded a cello. It wasn't very good, and so I re-recorded it, and I just made sure that was going to be absolutely as good as I could do at the time, and was as expensive sounding as I could make it at the time, and then you've got a proper broadcast. I had 2 broadcast credits, and then and I spent a long time doing natural history because of that, really, and it was great. It was a great founding for writing music, but it wasn't really what I got into writing music for, actually, natural history. But
but a good platform.
A good platform, yeah. Yeah.
And just going back to what you're saying there as well, because I'm conscious that there are a lot of aspiring composers who do listen to this. Is that and as you say, the industry is very different to back then when you were carrying around taking VHS or taking tapes. When you're mentoring people from NFTS, is that, what's your advice to them in terms of how to approach cracking the industry?
Well, there is that aspect of it. The other aspect of it, I think I'm mentoring someone at the moment, and she's a brilliant composer. I really like her stuff, and I think she's doing exactly the right thing. I mean, there are other routes now. There wasn't really. I suppose there probably was, but it wasn't known to me. There is obviously the assisting route, and that's a hard route, I think. It is definitely a route, and I'm sort of surprised that the colleges don't actually teach properly, a module on this is actually what will be required to assist someone on a big TV series or a big budget film, when there's a team of people working. The difficulty with that is getting sucked into a world where you don't write very much, or the opposite, where you write loads and don't get credited for it, and that's a horrendous part of the industry, and as we both know, happens all the time, and I try really hard not to let that happen. And so Suvi Eva Akas, who was that's the only assistant, really writing assistant, me and Geoff have had, and she very rapidly became a co-composer, and so the last 2 things I've done with her have been complete co-composing things, and so it's trying to give credit where credit's due, but that's hard. Sometimes I also understand that sometimes you get given a job as a composer, and you can't really, the jobs come to you, and you can't really let the cat out the bag in a way. You have to sort of, because otherwise the production company would think you were pulling a fast one on them, to a degree. So it's a tricky world to navigate, but that is a world a way in, is assisting. The other thing I think, so it's the young woman I'm mentoring is Blanca Romero, and she has a brilliant. So I didn't need to advise her on this, but I think it's a really good idea. She has a sort of musical persona outside of her film music persona, so she's really pursuing that to the best of her ability. and doing exactly the things we talked about, writing for student films, short films, anything that comes away, doing assisting. But she's also pursuing this sort of alter ego pop music type, sort of alternative. I don't even know how she'd describe her act, but pursuing that as well, because if you can find if you're just constantly writing stuff, obviously that's good for you as a creative and as a writer, but also it seems to me it sort of depends on what type of composer you want to be. If you really do want to be the next Hans Zimmer, Lorne Balfe, Ben Wolfish or type composer, it probably assisting, doing that sort of music and getting doing lots of ads, but I think that's there are lots of people wanting to do that. It's never what I wanted to do. I wanted to write music that was slightly more of the sort of left field variety, I suppose, for want of a terrible term. And if you do want to do that, then you're almost better off as establishing that world yourself outside of film music and hoping people come to you. And that for me, I had to sort of find that because my meeting with Geoff Barrow and working with him, who obviously had that in spades, had this musical identity outside of film music. But I did a lot of work with a guy called Scott Hendy and his bands, and a lot of string arrangements on Geoff's record label. And so when I was trying to move from natural history into drama, I took the advice I'm giving now, which is do as much different stuff. So yeah, that would be my. If you've got a sort of niche that you go down musically, that is where you really can sort of, what's the right phrase? Where you can really sort of show off a voice. Really follow that to its extremes, because there are now, as we both know, there are now lots of people coming into film music through those avenues, because a director doesn't want a Zimmer-esque score. He or she wants a score that comes from somewhere totally different, and so will an obscure indie album that they bought 2 years ago that they love, they'll contact that person and find out if they're interested in writing film music. So just keep all those plates alive would probably be my advice.
Nice. I spoke to Aaron May and David Ridley, who scored Adolescence, but that's the Bristol connection as well. And something they mentioned was that they felt that collaboration was a superpower when it comes to composing. Obviously, you've got a long-standing working relationship with Geoff Barrow, and you mentioned Suvi as well, who obviously showed something which was instantly. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about what collaboration means to you, and what I'm interested as well, like with Suvi, what was it when you started working together that made you sort of go very quickly, like, okay, she's a co-composer rather than an assistant?
So to cover the collaboration thing first, I almost wouldn't want to do it any other way now. Having spent sort of 15 years writing natural history music, more or less on my own, I did big collaborative series with David Attenborough series I did with a composer called Dan Jones, and another thing with Barnaby Taylor, and another thing. But that was very much, you do that program, I'll do that program, or you do that bit and I'll do that bit. It wasn't collaborative that much in the sort of writing sense. And it was only when working with Geoff, really our first big thing was, well, we did a project called Drock, which started life as Alex Garland's Dread film, which was called Dread, I think, yeah. But that didn't get to the end for lots of reasons, which the stories are out there if people can be bothered to read them. But that we then turned that into an album called Drock, and that we just wrote together, literally on 3 Oberheim analog synthesizers. And I suppose, if I'm being honest, it goes back to what we first talked about. I was suddenly doing this. I was making music with other people for the first time, and I had been in bands, but I'd more or less been the keyboard player in the band, or I'd never really sat and sort of sculpted something together. And that whole thing of the whoever it was, your previous guest who described it as a superpower, it sort of really is, because it gives you, there's the obvious benefit of two minds, but also there's this thing of I think you bring your best ideas to someone almost because you're having to show it to them. And so I'm always thinking, would this pass the Geoff Barrow or the Suvi test? Is this, and that's a good thing. But also, this is a massive thing. I think one of the hardest things about composing is judgment. Is anyone can write something. The sort of judgment of whether this is good or interesting or not. Is the real skill, and so there'll be incidences which hopefully Geoff and Suvi would be able to say I've helped them in this way. But there was one when we were doing devs, for example. We wrote a lot of it here in my studio. We used to sit. We still do, but we used to spend a lot more time, me and Geoff, just literally in the same room, messing around with stuff together. And I was more the technical. Use the computer, use the logic, sort of person, and Geoff would sit at the back and sort of go, "Oh, yeah, that sounds good," and then sort of jump up. But Geoff is equally, adept on these things now as me, and so we'd sort of just literally take it in turns. He might be sat on the keyboard playing something, and I'd go, "Oh, wait there. What if that sounds great, but what if it went here instead?" But also things like there was one time I was messing around with something in here, playing some sounds through I think it was a sort of granulator, a grain space thing, and I'd almost just clicked off and just gone, "Oh no, that sounds rubbish." And Geoff came in and went, "Wait, two sounds ago, what was that? And I went, I don't know. And I used the sort of logic, record what you've just been playing, and it came, and he went, yeah, that. And then he got on and developed that sound, and it became the key sound in devs, and that might have been gone had I been on my own, just because I was hearing it a different way. I was hearing it in relation to what I was trying to do, whereas Geoff was hearing it completely afresh. So it didn't work at all for what I was trying to do, but it totally worked as a sound on its own. And Geoff is amazing at that. He's built a career out of, sort of sonic judgment, I suppose. And so to have that in my armoury is a superpower, and I hope he would say having my I can think musically in a way that Geoff doesn't sometimes, like not traditional, but what if we went to that weird chord there or whatever, there were just so many. And the literally, a lot of devs, for example, and a lot of Annihilation score was literally us in Geoff's room bashing around on things, so there's that element of it as well, which is much more like a band approach in a way, which is not something you can do on your own. You can't be a band on your own. It's
almost a happy accident, isn't it? It's Christobel Tapia de Veer talks about this quite a lot, and I think Jed Kersel did as well, that Jed Kersel talks about he sort of went for lunch and left his guitar and amps and pedalboard on, and when he came back there was some sort of weird feedback loop happening on a very low level through the amp, and it was like, oh my god, what's that? It's amazing. And he recorded it, and then that became the sort of bed for something. And it's similar with this, but it's interesting what you're talking about, the idea that collaboration is a superpower, because in context of what you were doing it wasn't working, but out of context Geoff obviously heard something that was like, hang on a minute, there's definitely something there. And as you say, that could have been confined to the scrap heap had he not come in at the wreck.
So I think the happy accident thing is amazing. I love happy accidents. Me and Geoff are all over it. But I suppose you possibly increase the happiness of the accidents, the chances of them being happy by doubling your chance of having two ears listening out for those happy accidents.
Someone mentioned to me as well what you were talking about. This was in relation to songwriting, is that having a partner, they act as a shit filter. So something that you think is great, they'll listen to and go, no, that's shit. But also, as you say, is when you play something to someone, it's a very revealing process, isn't it? Because you listen to it very differently, and if you find yourself making excuses for whatever you're playing, then you sort of have to go, okay, well, I need to go back to the drawing board on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's another part of it is and this is something Geoff is particularly good at, and I think I've learned to be good at with him as well, which is listening to, and it's again fairly obvious, listening to someone else, what someone else is, an idea they put forward, and you as a person who has an idea, you sometimes get emotionally or attached to some part of that idea, and it's very difficult to, say you've written this amazing piano piece that you think is beautiful, and then you've added a cello line, and you've added whatever, and someone like Geoff will go, "What's that like without the piano?" And you go, "Well, it's a piano piece. What are you on about?" And you take out the piano, and it's like, "Oh yeah, so that ability to get outside yourself, have someone, and that teaches you to maybe be a bit more like that yourself as well, and just be sort of fairly brutal, because often the thing that you get attached to might be the thing that's holding something back from being really good. And we spent, me and Geoff and Suvi, and me and Suvi and Geoff and me and Suvi together as well, spend a lot of our time really trying to do things in a way that isn't standard, if that's possible. There are obviously constraints with film music and TV music. You've got to do the thing that the film or TV requires, but if you can do that in a way that isn't, so if it is a tense scene in a police procedural, if you just get out your synth and it just goes bom 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 bom, it will sound like every other police procedural in the world ever, and it will work. But so that trying to find a different way of doing those things really helps, having other people and other ideas, and that again, another thing Geoff's very good at, and actually Alex Garland as well. You sort of got to bring, I think sometimes the director, if you've got a good relationship with them, into the sort of creative of saying, well, you did that there, but what if you tried that there instead? And we've had lots of examples with Alex Garland, particularly where that's happened.
Well, speaking of police, that might be quite a nice way to segue into going under the skin of Under Salt Marsh. Under the skin. But just before we do, if you are a regular listener to the show and you can spare 10 seconds, I would be massively grateful if you could just rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. It just helps spread the word and helps this podcast reach as many people as possible. So yeah, I'd be very grateful. Anyway, let's get back to the chat. We're going to have a chat about the title sequence in particular, but just tell us a bit about how this project came about. And obviously you were collaborated with Suvi on this, didn't you? So
a little bit about collaborating with Suvi. I won't go on too much because you asked me that earlier, but Suvi started life as an assistant, and this might be of interest to those of you listening who are trying to get into the game. And she did do that thing of, she wrote the music for a student film, or a low budget film that my dad was actually in as a and so I went to see it because my dad was in it. I didn't know anything about Suvi, it was a low budget film, and it had its plus points and its minus points, and it my dad was amazing, obviously. But one of the things that really stood out, I was like, God, the music's good for this. And I asked the producer afterwards who did that music, and she said, it's a young student who's at the affiliated college. It was her final year project. And I just said, well, if she ever wants to speak to me, here's my email address. And Suvi got in touch, and we went for a coffee, and I had the chat that we've been talking about. But her music was really good. And so she was assisting us in a traditional way, and I think she'd admit now she found that really hard. You know, it is hard. It's you become a librarian. You have to be in charge of. I think it was Loose or Devs. She first started. No, it was a film called Loose. She assisted us on first, and then when we did whether we did Hannah or Devs before, I can't remember, but she co-wrote a track on a cue on Devs, which and she then started working on Hannah, and she was doing so much. I just said, well, look, you've got to be a co-composer on this. So she was a co-composer on that, and she's just a brilliant composer, and you know, another sort of level of ideas in, you know, and me and Geoff and Suvi have worked together on Archive 81 and a few things, and then because Geoff has this other life as a, you know, in Beak, his band, and he was making a feature film as well. Under Salt Marsh came up, and Geoff just couldn't do it. I didn't want to do it on my own. I never ever want to do a big TV series on my own again. It's just not worth it. Life's too short. It's much more fun with another person, but it's also only really possible. So anyone who does a big TV series and says they do it completely on their own, I'm not 100% sure. You know, I totally understand the reason for not making it a co-composed thing, but you have to have help, and so it's sort of a degree of how much help you want. And with Under Salt Marsh, the director, showrunner, creator, writer, Claire Oakley, I'd done the music to her low-budget feature film, Makeup, quite a long time ago now. In fact, when Suvi was first working for me as an assistant, and so Suvi assisted on that. And so when Claire approached me to see if I wanted to do Under Salt Marsh, I said, you know, well, it will be, do you remember Suvi? And she did. I said, well, it will be a co-composed thing with her, and I could point her towards some of the stuff Suvi had done on her own, and she was totally into it. We got really involved. I must admit, I would normally not run a mile, but police procedurals aren't really my thing necessarily. There's a lot of them out there that are very standard and don't really have the opportunity to, you know, you'd be better off choosing someone else to do the music. I'm not really very good at that sort of, sort of standard police procedural thing. But because it was Claire, I knew it would be different. It would, you know, that it would concentrate on the atmosphere of the landscape and the community, and as much as the whodunit side of things. It was also set in North Wales, which is a part of the world I know really well. My grandmother was from there. She's still got a house, but it's not her house anymore. My dad and my aunt and uncle look after it. Literally right over the valley where Under Salt Marsh was filmed. So I really knew it as a place, and loved the scripts. And so we got involved in it quite early, actually. Quite early on, we wanted to, you know, Suvi didn't know that part of the world, but we wanted to go up, and we went on set. There's the sequence with the choir on the beach in episode 2. There's a vigil sort of thing for the young boy, and Jonathan Pryce sort of speaks to everyone on the beach, and the idea was that they would break into song. And I talked to Claire very early on about that and said, look, I really think if you want this to be effective, it really should be sung on the beach. It should be a song that we choose and works. And so the dialect coach on the series suggested that the song, which is called Hireth, and I then I wanted to arrange it, not really arrange it, just sort of do a sort of rough, like it almost be impromptu. I didn't want to sound like a choir. I wanted to sound like a community singing, but you know, they do quite often sing in harmony in that part of the world. And so we got together this choir of extras through various contacts. My sister's ex-boyfriend runs a choir in Aberystwyth, and he came up in a minibus with his choir, and we had a morning rehearsing it in the hotel beforehand, and then a day film. It was great fun, and it was a brilliant to see Jonathan Pryce do his thing. So me and Suvi are there in the background singing. And then also my daughter Bella got a small part in the show as one of the cousins, she's at drama school, and they were on the lookout for a dark-haired, pale-skinned to play the part of Brooke Bevan, who's one of the cousins.
Oh, she's one of the Bevans, yeah.
She's one of the Bevans, yeah. And I was like, oh, I know someone who looks like that. And she's not Welsh, unfortunately, so she didn't get a speaking role, but she did a full-on audition and got through. And she's in every episode. And so I was up there a lot with her, chaperoning in a way. We stayed at the house. So really got invested in the series, much more so. So my daughter had 20 days odd of filming on the show.
So how did you find any time to actually make any music?
Well, luckily it came. I took my laptop. I've got a sort of travelling set, and I've often written music up at Pennerbryn, which is this house. I've often done music up there. I've worked on big Hollywood film in the cottage up there. So I would take that up, and I would just drop her off on set and go back and work. And so it was almost perfect for messing around with ideas for the show.
And what was the starting point for that? Where did you and Suvi start in terms of establishing the sonic texture and the sort of tone of the...
A lot of it came through there were lots of discussions. Claire had, very specifically, in a weird way, has a love of the saxophone and the clarinet, and it was like, oh, well, that's an in as much as anything. And then me and Suvi, having spent time up there, wondered if the sort of basis of the music we were going to write could be that it's from the elements. So the saxophone is never played straight, jazzy. It's almost like these sounds. I mean, this obviously doesn't apply to everything in the end, but it was the sort of in point was, can we make music that everything almost sounds like is being blown by the wind, or hammered by the rain, or is wires whistling in the wind, so it's all organic. And I think we did stick to that. Everything is organic in there, which we quite often get involved in electronic scores, but everything in Under Salt Marsh is a real thing, blown, bowed, plucked. And it was like, can it be plucked or blown or bowed in a way that you don't actually know what it is, almost as an instrument. So yes, I think you do know it's a saxophone or a clarinet or a flute. And Suvi played all of those, and it was brilliant.
Does she play woodwind, or she just managed to turn her hands?
She's a flute player,
okay,
but
yeah.
She hadn't played saxophone or clarinet, so it was a turn her hand thing. I had an old clarinet that someone had given me. She bought an old saxophone. She obviously plays the flute. We've got I played the cello on it, but not really as a cello. Plucked it like a guitar. Not knowing what notes I was playing at all. There's a lot of waterphone in there, which is a strange, I'm sure you know what it is, but just for those listening who don't, it's a big metal bowl that's filled with water, has these prongs that come off it that you can hit and bow, and it was traditionally used in sort of 70s horror films, but sort of banging it or playing it with beaters, it just sounded sort of weather beaten, and so that was the main idea was to try and create music that sounded like it could come from the landscape in a way, but not be. And again, a lot of the stuff me and Suvi and Geoff do, there is a sort of, can it not be this? Not fall into, let's not use strings. I mean, apart from plucked cello, and I think there is possibly a tiny bit here and there of bowed stuff, but not use big syrupy orchestral chords, or not even use non-syrupy orchestral chords, because that's the sort of natural history way of doing landscapes, and I've spent 20 years doing that, and I know exactly what it is, and it makes my I cannot go there, but also it wouldn't have been right. This is a sort of odd. There needed to be a slight oddness to the music, and so it's a difficult balance. It needed to be slightly odd, but it was a primetime Sky police procedural. So one thing that was amazing about this show, you very often get on a show. We did a show, me and Suvi, before this, called Constellation with Apple, and we had all these conversations, make it different, do all of this, and then the editors edited in a load of Hans Zimmer and a load of Gravity and a load, and once you've opened that box, once that Pandora's box is opened and you've put in a bit of big, koto drums playing exciting music as a spaceship comes to Earth, you can't do it any other. It's whatever anyone else does, your very interesting way of doing it will sound weak in comparison to that. It would, we had to say, I promise you it would be better in the big overarching step back thing. It's much better to try and do something. But yes, if you're just presenting to an exec at Apple this one clip and you want it to seem cinematic and exciting, well, of course, a bit of Hans Zimmer, and then the battle's lost. And so we were very careful with Under Salt Marsh to just we gave a big bucket of demos. We called it the bucket, and it was loads and loads of demos of wind playing, of this sort of odd music. And Sky and Little Door, Claire and Elwyn Price in particular were so insistent on the editors and the editors were great, and to use that. Don't get tempted by, and if there's something that you want to put temp music on that you haven't got in that book, speak to Ben and Suvi and see if they can supply something. And it meant that we were, and Sky were on board totally. Lots of these big streaming companies, they'll say, we want something a bit different, but they won't really mean it. Whereas Sky often said, to be fair on them, they often said, oh no, make it a bit more Under Salt Marsh, or go even further and stuff like that.
And you mentioned your bucket of demos, so you provided them with lots of pieces of music which the editor, they could then actually go and I suppose temp score it, but almost sort of piece together a score from the cues that you'd written.
Yes. So the temp score was honestly 90% our demos. Didn't always work. If it wasn't our demos, it was like it was. There was a phone conversation, and it was that fits in our world. That's not going to throw, and it might, and it's again another mistake editors make is they think, if to keep the composers on side, I'll use temp music from their past scores. Yeah. And we've had, we've watched Annihilation. There was Archive 81. They put the big cue from Annihilation all over and it's like we can't. That's so wrong for this. Someone answering a phone and it going wah, 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 wah. It's like no. But again, the door. So that doesn't always work. So I've got no problem with temp music being someone else's, but keep it within the world that you've created, especially if you've really spent time talking about this sonic world and this palette that you're going to use. It's really crucial to not to not break it, or at least not break it with something that someone somewhere is going to go, oh, that's so much more exciting than what they're doing. And it might be for that one instance, but it's a very difficult thing to convince people that just because it's more exciting to have a whole orchestra and koto drums playing as a car's driving over a causeway, it's not in the long run, because actually what happens is that is music that everyone's heard before. And it's not really that, you only have to watch a Marvel film to know that it's not really that exciting. It just becomes a wall of mush. Anyway, that's what I'm digressing.
It can be exciting, but it can also be incongruous at the same time. And if, you're talking about the soft aesthetic of Under Salt Marsh, the music needs to reflect that. It's not necessarily about excitement, it's about creating a world and an atmosphere.
Yeah, and that was always our main priority. And the music, it does, in episodes 5 and 6, elements of excitement and traditional sort of tension building and energy and pace come into it. But over the course of the first, certainly 3-4 episodes, it really is about atmosphere.
And I had a question, actually, because I noticed with quite a lot of scores, like probably particularly with Devs and with Civil War, there's a lot of metallic textures. Do you have a sort of a glut of metallic instruments which you play, like pans and things, or do you bring in players for it?
No, it's all normally played by us. I've got the waterphone is sort of our go-to. So often when you hear something and you might think it's something different, it quite often is the waterphone. And we did way back for Annihilation. Actually, I think we spent like a week for Annihilation and Devs. We spent a long time recording the waterphone, to the extent that we've got our own bespoke libraries of it. The waterphone and a thing called what did we call it? A space bass. The other thing we did use a bit on Under Salt Marsh, and we'd used on Devs previously, were these happy drums, I think they're called. They're like kids' tongue drums, and we got about 15 of them for Devs. All in different, and so we haven't actually used them since Devs, but that was actually one of the occasions where a bit of temp music from Devs it hadn't become temp music, but Claire had said, all this atmospheric stuff is lovely, is working really well. Is there something we can add just a tiny bit of movement, momentum into it, so it doesn't just become this sort of wash of sounds? And we were wary of that as well. And these happy drums that we'd used on Devs were sort of perfect for that, because again they had a sort of, they're never quite in tune, and they sort of sound a little bit like they could be wind chimes, or they don't really sound, they certainly don't sound electronic. They sort of sound very organic, and again, that was mainly Suvi played those. She's got them all in her studio, and we sampled a load of them as well when we were doing Devs, so we had that sort of up our sleeve. So yeah, we have got an array of metallic stuff, but it's either us playing it, or it's from big sessions we've done where we've banked. I've got contact instruments of like hundreds of them, all just, but some of them that have never been used. So you sometimes go, you're looking for something. Oh, we've never used that on. I wonder what that is. And you go, oh, actually, that's really cool. That's it's quite a nice thing to dig out.
Nice. So, can we have a little chat about the title music for Under Salt Marsh, because it's beautifully haunting, and obviously it's in English and Welsh language as well.
Night after sorrow, you're my song. Strings will collide, we are undone.
Yeah, if we can, in the anatomy of a cue, even though it's probably not technically a cue, or does it turn up as a cue at some point in there?
No, it doesn't turn up as a cue, although it has elements of a cue in it. And I can big it up as much as I like, because what I didn't let on to you when we were chatting on email is that's not, I feel bad that it's not actually that obvious on Spotify and stuff. That isn't we didn't write that song.
Oh, really?
And nope, we arranged it.
Okay.
But if that's okay to still talk about it, because it is still interesting.
Yeah.
And
okay.
we arranged it. Me and Suvi arranged it. So just to step back, we had done the titles for Under Salt Marsh. At some point, there wasn't even going to be a title sequence, and then Sky said, "Yes, we do want a title sequence." And this was, and I don't know how this happened, but it kept on being parked as a thing. We were so concentrating on the score. I think we thought, oh well, there'll be a bit of score, and that will work as the titles or whatever. And it became clearer to me, definitely, and to Claire, to me and Suvi and Claire, that we couldn't. One of the things we'd sort of boxed ourselves in a little bit, because we'd completed quite a lot of the score by the time the titles really came around to having to be written. And that might, in some cases, this has worked out well for us. On Archive 81, this exact same thing happened, and we just did a sort of, Suvi mainly did it. We just said, right, take the best sounds, atmospheres, whatever, from everything we've done and create a title sequence. It's a sort of noise-based title sequence anyway, and it worked really well, and it was obviously very fitting with the score because it was all the sounds from the score. With Under Salt Marsh, we got to a stage where I felt we'd sort of boxed ourselves in. It was a good thing that the score was very singular. It's quite a... there's not much traditional music in it. There's not many themes in it. There's Jackie's theme. There's a theme for Rafe, but there's not much you could sort of traditionally hum back. And Jackie's theme is very languid, really, and atmospheric. There was nothing really that suited the titles immediately from the stuff we'd written for the rest of the show. And even an arrangement or a revamped working of stuff from show, it felt, because it was quite singular, the score, it just felt like we were never having a break from it. And so it was like, actually, and I think there are two ways to go with title sequences. It's either you really do something that the score then runs with, and Succession does that, and but we just actually decided for Under Salt Marsh we wanted to have a palate cleanser. And so the idea became, and again, one of the things we hadn't managed to do in the score that we'd always wanted to somehow do, but there just wasn't a place for it, so we'd managed to, we hope, get this sense of the landscape and atmosphere. We hadn't really managed to get anything that conveyed this sort of sense of community in the score. There are elements like I talked about earlier, the choir on the beach.
Yep.
And community was a big part of what we. So me and Suvi had this idea of, well, why don't we have a song and we'll get it sung by a sort of community choir, and we can do it in English, in Welsh, and it will sort of subliminally represent the community. So then, and with this all had to be done very quickly. At this stage, Sky had suddenly said we need the titles in 2 weeks' time. So it was like all hands on deck. Claire sent us a list of songs, a Beth Gibbons song, a Nick Drake song, I don't know, there was about 5 songs. We tried, my dad is in a choir, we tried them out with his choir. None of them really worked. And then we narrowed it down to about 3 songs. And then I heard my daughter, who's in the show, writes music as well. She goes out under she's a sort of establishing herself as a artist. She calls herself Beadie.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I heard her playing. I'd heard this song before. She wrote it about a year and a half ago, and so I had heard it. But she was playing it on the piano, and I thought, do you know what? That is perfect how it really is perfect in terms of atmosphere as a song. And I said to her, do you mind if we take this along? We were recording the Beth Gibbons song and another song with my dad's choir. Can we take this song in as well? And she was like, yeah, of course. So we did that, and it was by miles the best choice. But obviously it's my daughter, and that's a problem. So what I did is I sent it to Claire and Sky, and I said I didn't tell them anything about it. So partly for me, I wanted it to be chosen on its own merit. So for about 2 weeks, no one knew who that song was by. I had to pretend it was sort of by me. What did I say? It was by an artist in Bristol who we're working with. And here's the other two. So they had 3 or 4 choices, and then unanimously they wanted to choose that one. So it's a song called Mosaic by my daughter Bella, and it's worked up for choir, and then the Welsh part of it, again, we had to do very quickly, which was again really a lovely thing to do. The 2 lead cousins in the show, played by Gwion Morris Jones and Lisa Gwellian. I think that's her surname. I might be getting that wrong. Lisa. Bella had talked to them. They sort of took Bella under her wing when she was on the show, and they talked about singing. And so when we needed Welsh, I got Lisa down she got on the train to Bristol in a day's notice and came down and sang the Welsh version and taught me, Suvi and Bella how to sing the Welsh version as well. So the backing singers are me and Suvi and Bella, and then Gwion, who was the other cousin who played Eddie. So Lisa played Kath in the show, and Gwion played Eddie, and he's a musician himself, so he's got a little recording studio, and he recorded the male version, the Welsh. So the Bevan cousins, if without any spoilers for the show, they play a sort of pivotal part in messing things up, I suppose. Yeah. And then they redeem themselves by being the lead singers and the composer of the title sequence. But the arrangement, then me and Subi had to arrange it in a way that suited the show. So the piano line and the song is Bella's, and then we brought into it the plucked cellos. Yes, is that the kind of pulsing sound underneath? Yeah, yeah. That is the waterphone and plucked cello again, and obviously build saxophone stuff building up underneath. And then fortuitously, well, not really fortuitously because it's only a 3-note theme, but Jackie's theme sort of fits in on saxophone. We've had to pitch it down or up, I can't remember, towards the very end. So there is a sort of series link in the music. So in terms of how it's constructed, it's a piano part and a song line played by my daughter. And then the one, Sky loved it straight away, but one of the things they said was, can it have some momentum in it? So that's where the plucked parts come in, and again that was a sort of back and forth. We hadn't at this point seen what the titles were going to be. It was all being done very quickly after spending quite a long time on the show. Suddenly, this was, as it often works, this was all hands to the deck and a bit of panic stations. And we hadn't seen, but we were told it was going to be underwater waves, sort of motion, and so that idea of building some sort of waves into the music, so you get a line of singing and then it goes dunk 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 in a wave, which again sort of fortuitously worked really well with the visuals, building up to a sort of final wave, and bringing in some of this elements of the score that had already been written. In fact, by the time we got to the titles, we'd already mixed episodes 1 to 4, I think. So it was very late in the day, and the titles were bolted on at the end. And then this idea of one of the things that really sold everyone about the titles, I said, we're not doing that thing that Succession do where the titles comes up a lot in the show. So that really gives us some sort of quite really useful emotional payoff if the only time we've ever used it as part of the score is right at the end of the show. And even if it's just a short part of it, if you want to tie things up in a way that feels resonant, and that was where we played Jackie's theme as Jackie, as Bull walks away from Jackie, and then he turns, and you hear an a cappella version of the titles. We toyed with that being in Welsh, and then it being followed by the English version, but actually it had more resonance because you'd heard the Welsh version only once. It's used as the titles in episode 6, and that was mainly a practical thing. We'd only recorded the Welsh version.
Okay.
By that stage, it could have been used in episode 5 as well, but we thought it more resonant to play the English version a cappella and go into a Welsh version to close the show, and that I thought worked really, really well and was a nice way of tying it up and tying up the whole series. And it's an interesting balance. Is it does that work better because you haven't really heard the titles music all the way through as a cue. Maybe, I hope so. That was the idea. I mean, it was sort of thrust upon us that way because by the sort of the working schedule of the series. And I certainly really admire the scores to, I mentioned it before, but Succession, where the titles literally forms the bedrock of 90% of the cues, and I think that's great, especially if you've got the musicality of someone like Nicholas Britell to change it up. But we were sort of doing the opposite, in that the titles is a palate cleanser, literally not written by us, arranged by us, I'm really proud of it, and I can big it up because it's not by me.
Yeah, I think it works really well. If I may add my 2 cents, because I think you're aware of it in the titles, and it's a lovely sort of catchy melody, and it's haunting. But then when it gets used at the end, there's something about it. That's where I noticed it the most. All of a sudden, there was a sense of resolve in using that, and that's what the first time I noticed that it was in 2 different languages as well. Obviously, I'd heard it before, but when it sort of starts in English and then goes into Welsh, I was like, oh, hang on, this, yeah. And then all of a sudden, I'm sort of thinking back, I'm like, yeah, no, definitely heard this in Welsh because I knew the melody, but not what was been sung about. So yeah, I think it works. It works nice.
Oh, great! Yeah, no, the Welsh thing was sort of important. It's slight regret that we didn't manage to. There was a talk of it being alternate episodes, English Welsh. Again, practically, I'm not sure that was possible to work from the way the final mix schedules and deliveries went. But still, it's great to have it, and the actual single release of the song, which is on the soundtrack album, it exists as a sort of 4.5-5 minute song. We expanded on the Welsh idea, so some of the verses are sung in Welsh. Lisa came down again and sang some of the verse parts in Welsh, so it alternates between English and Welsh. And in the single version of the song, I think the a cappella bit is sang in Welsh actually, and then goes to English, whereas in the series it's English to Welsh. But anyway, it was great. I think it was a really good idea, and it's sort of quite unique to this series and important as well. Yeah.
And just as much as anything for my own curiosity, because I think something that you're a master of is having these sort of beautiful textures move in and out of each other. And I think as well, you also combine organic sounds, which obviously Under Salt Marsh is entirely organic, but in something like Devs, there's much more electronica, and you blend those really nicely as well. Have you got, is there sort of few things you've learned over the years in how best to blend different sounds and have them move together?
I think there's an element of even the organic sounds quite often are processed to a degree, or if they're not processed, they're not straight, and that could be in the way they're played. I'm not a massive fan of, say, a traditional orchestra and a synth, that would be a sort of Marvel-esque sort of Zimmer approach. It's not. I don't personally. It's just personal taste, really. I don't. Whereas I've always, and I think Geoff is the same. I've always been really interested in not knowing.
Yes,
which we talked about before. Not quite knowing whether something is electronic or organic, and not quite being able to put your finger on where it's come from. And so as far as the blending, I think if you don't know, if you're just literally treating everything on its merits almost, it doesn't really matter how it's been derived. It's again, it's back to this sort of judgment thing. Do those things sit well together? One of Geoff's great things is always throw stuff out. I think as sort of, for want of a better word, traditional musicians or people who've grown up composing on DAWs, there's a real danger of overfilling things,
kitchen sinking.
Kitchen, absolutely. And I think if you're aware of that, it doesn't really matter whether. And I think the boundaries are so sort of blurred anyway, because a lot of the organic stuff you're using comes in the form of a contact instrument or a sample pack, and I've got no problems with with off the shelf sample packs at all, and using Spitfire libraries or whatever. But unless you're literally trying to do something that has a resonance because it is pure orchestra or pure jazz or which it often is the case, and we all have to do that. I think it's the blending of organic and electronic is a sort of sound on the merits of those sounds in the moment.
Yeah. And without giving away any trade secrets, are there particular plugins that you quite often turn to for processing sounds?
Yes, and it's sort of I go through phases with them. I think when we were mentioning Devs, I can't remember what it's called. It was a grain. It was quite a cheap one. It might have even been free, but they all do the same sort of thing. It was a granulator plugin. What else have we used a lot of? We did go through a stage of using hardware plugins quite a lot. Eventide Time Factor and Black Hole and a few of those. Really, the Logic, I've got to be honest, the Logic pedal board, the Logic, again, it's more a case of on its merit. Geoff is amazing at. I think both of us would say neither of us really know what we're doing at all with plugins. Probably Geoff more than me, but certainly I've noticed watching Geoff, the way Geoff works with stuff. It's like, just actually don't do it we used a hell of a lot of flange on Annihilation, which is a sort of, nowhere is the naffest, if you ask sort of, it's the naffest plugin ever. That's 70s prog. But actually, because no one uses it, it sounded, Waterphone through the Logic flanger, and maybe some, a chain of things, but they were all just the Logic pedalboard plugins. Nothing way out of the ordinary, but probably pushed in ways that you're not supposed to push them. And again, back to the happy accident thing. Finding accidents. My sort of lack of knowing what things are supposed to do can be a superpower in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it is back to what we were saying about organic or electronic instruments. It is literally about judging things on its own right, and that was an interesting thing when I first started working with Geoff, because obviously I knew him through playing football and we were sort of friends, but I hadn't ever seen him work in the studio, and because of his history with Portishead and I sort of expected him to be this sort of studio wizard. And he completely and utterly knows his stuff in the areas he needs to know his stuff. But a great deal of his sort of studio technique, for want of a better word, is like ram that up. Don't be too delicate about it. Press that. What does that sound like? Over compress that. What's that sound like? Until that sounds really cool. That's a really cool sound. And we've no idea how we got there. I mean, just to go back to that Devs thing we talked about, we were lined up to do a concert, the Trent Reznor Atticus Ross concert in LA that unfortunately got pulled in the end, but it might happen again, and doing things live. And so we were having to go through old stuff to work out how we might do things, recreate them. We cannot recreate that sound. I mean, we cannot. It was so that's its downside. You almost need to video yourself, and loads of Ex Machina, which was the first score we did together, was done on. A lot of it was done on these Oberheim analog synths, and a lot of it was in this room. Geoff, we'd had two of them plugged into my system, and Geoff just doing stuff, and me running in and going, I'm not sure I've pressed record there, mate. That sounds amazing. What are you doing? And then it's done. It's recorded, but we haven't. There's no recall on that, which I suppose is the slight downfall of the sort of happy accident way of working. But as long as you learn to press record and it exists somewhere, and it's a great way to make sure that everything sounds unique. If you're using sounds that you can't even recreate yourself, then it just means that every time it's very experimental and you get that unique texture that can't be found anywhere else, even by yourself. Yeah,
exactly. It's like when you hide something, it's so well hidden that you can't actually remember where you hid it.
Oh, I know. It was infuriating when we were trying to do this this concert stuff, but
incredible. Yeah. Great. Well, Ben, I'm conscious of time.
Sorry, I've been waffling.
No, it's great. It's all good.
Getting a taste.
Got the quick fire questions, but just before we do, you touched on briefly the Beatles earlier, who obviously were quite influential in terms of your creativity. You also mentioned John Carpenter. Are there other bands, artists, films, directors that you could sort of cite as been incredibly influential to your creativity?
I mean, so I think film scores opened up I think I mentioned Tangerine Dream. I used to listen to a lot of that sort of early synth stuff, and I remember reading as a 13, 14-year-old after watching Risky Business that Tangerine Dream were really into Steve Reich, and I'd never heard of him or what that was, and so I got started listening to that, and I think like lots of young impressionable, I loved that 70s minimalist stuff, especially Steve Reich.
Did they do the theme tune to Street Hawk? Or was it
Tangerine
Airwolf?
Dream.
Or Airwolf? Was it one of the two?
I don't know. Yes, you'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was their Score for Risky Business that was my sort of lead in, and Love on a Real Train.
Yeah, it was. Street Hawk theme tune was by Tangerine Dream.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was it?
I loved that.
John Carpenter, and then film composers of the more sort of traditional variety. I always loved Jerry Goldsmith, and as a kid, I listened to every sort of music under the sun. I wish I listened to more now. I was into, I went from being into heavy metal to, synth stuff to normal pop music.
What metal were you listening to?
Oh, my cousin used to babysit me when I was sort of 9 or 10, and I remember him bringing round Saxon, Wheels of Steel, and AC/DC, the live version of If You Want Blood, You've Got It, and I just loved all that as a kid. And then, but I really and truly, the only sort of mainstay throughout my life, or the biggest mainstay, has been the Beatles. I'm sort of weirdly obsessive about them, and I think McCartney in particular. I love the fact that he sort of was seen as naff for a while, but was just doing his own thing, and I think there's the reappraisal of that has been great. There definitely has been a reappraisal, and those McCartney sort of homespun albums have really something to them as well. And then more recently, I think there are some brilliant people writing film scores. Mick Levy, Blank Mass, just lots of people on Geoff's label, Cliff Martinez. I think we're in a great period for film music. It's really, really interesting stuff out there, and it's great to sort of be a part of it in some way.
Absolutely. Glad you are. Time for the quickfire questions then.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, we've touched on some of these at the beginning, but what we didn't touch on was what's your favourite biscuit?
Biscuit. Now this is going to make me sound really mad, but I'm not a massive fan of biscuits. That's gonna throw. I mean, they're all right, but they're not something I would. If you'd said sort of chocolate or crisps or Haribo, I'm not some sort of food Puritan, but biscuits are just like. I like that. That I have to admit, I quite like just a solid bar of Tony's Chocolonely milk chocolate. That's my go-to at the moment. Crisps would be McCoy's cheese and onion, I think, at the moment. But
okay, but that changes.
Biscuits are, sort of rubbish cakes, aren't they? I don't know. Jaffa cake, I suppose.
Oh, well.
Jaffa cake. Is that a biscuit? Is that a cake?
Well, this is one of the philosophers
question.
Have debated this with scientists alike.
Well, if you're allowed to call that a biscuit, I'll go Jaffa cake.
Well, weirdly, Jaffa cakes haven't come up for a long time, but I seem to think there was a period of about 4 or 5 interviews that I did where Jaffa cakes were constantly brought up. And apparently Jaffa cake is a cake because if you leave it out, it goes hard. Whereas if you leave a biscuit out, it goes soft.
Is that the criteria, is it?
Scientifically...
Surely a hobnob goes... I don't know, hobnobs are all right. Chocolate hobnob would do.
Yeah, but
surely that goes hard, doesn't it?
I don't know.
I would softness to
imagine
it.
it would just soften up.
Stay, yeah.
But no, it's fine. Like Ruth Barrett said that she cited her favourite biscuit as the kind of the wafer that you get at confessional in church, which I thought was a strange choice. And Paulina Marquez, who's a music supervisor who I interviewed recently, she doesn't like biscuits either. She's Mexican, so she was talking about spicy Mexican sweets like candy. I wish it was just like, wow, the idea of
I can't be that interesting, I'm afraid.
No,
yeah.
It's all good. Hey, well, Tony's Chocolonely is a perfectly wonderful choice. How do you let off steam? I think we covered this at the beginning.
Yeah, we have to. Yeah,
with the sport.
Sport. Really, watching as well. Boringly, I watch rugby. Go and watch Bristol Bears play rugby. I'm a season ticket holder there.
And you're not a Rovers or a City fan?
I have been. I'm a City fan. If pushed, I'm a very, very lax. I was a season ticket holder at Bristol City as well.
Oh wow!
But I think my family would disown me if I went to watch Bristol City and Bristol Rugby. That would be a bit too much. So I sort of gave up the football. I still follow them. I still keep an eye. Roy Hodgson's just been appointed manager till the end of season, which will be interesting. But no, I haven't seen them. I saw them once last year. Geoff's a Rovers fan, or was a Rovers fan, so that used to be a mild bit of
banter.
Not really. Neither of us are massively. We're not into banter, really. But,
no. Okay.
So, but yeah, our Monday night football is a sort of Rovers City split, so we managed to all get on okay.
Yeah. So, well, just a bit of fun at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What's a little known fact about you?
Well, my friends wouldn't be surprised to hear this, and some of them probably know this, but I once left, just because I'm here, I don't know why this popped into my head, I once left my car at the petrol station down the road. I drove into where I'd normally walk, but I'd driven in. I went to buy a newspaper, filled up petrol, and then walked back to the studio. And when at the end of the day came and I thought my car had been stolen, I was convinced someone had taken it. It was ages ago. It was this terrible Vauxhall Viva.
Did you call the police?
The first car. No. My mum. I phoned my mum and I said, "Did I? I don't suppose you know where my car is?" And she said, "Just think back. What did you do?" And I said, "Oh, I drove." "Oh yeah, no, I drove," and it was still there at the petrol pumps at the bottom.
Just literally stood. Well, it's amazing that they'd not tried to flag it.
No, I don't know. It was back. It's about 20 years ago. No one cared.
No.
Anyway,
well, it's brilliant.
That's not really a fact about me. That's just a weird story.
It's a fun story, though, isn't it?
In my head.
Yeah,
there we go.
That's great.
I lose cars.
Yeah,
that's my fact.
Yeah, a lot of people lose car keys. Ben loses cars.
I lose cars.
Actual cars. What scares you?
You did send me these before. I should have thought about these, shouldn't I? What scares me? Nothing like. I don't mean nothing scares me. The obvious things scare me. Well, state of the world, health of kids, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I can definitely lie awake at night worrying about things and being scared of things. I'm not really scared of anything in particular, like spiders or anything like that. I don't. There's lots of things I don't like. Music technology magazines.
Music technology magazinophobia.
Yeah. They do my head in because it's just they give me massive imposter syndrome. I never know what they're talking about. So whenever I've been interviewed for a couple, and then that's the only time I'd read them, and then there's an article on a new compressor, and I don't understand the first paragraph, and I think, oh my god, this is an industry I'm supposed to be in. Yeah. So yeah, music technology boiled eggs. Don't like boiled eggs.
No.
So. Yeah. I mean, I suppose
not even soft boiled.
Oh God, no. So yeah, stick me in a room with a pile of music magazines and a soft-boiled egg, and you would do
anything to get out.
Yeah, right. But they don't keep me awake at night. They're not. I don't have not boiled egg themed nightmares.
Well, yeah,
they're weird. So,
Brilliant. And finally, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
I think we probably touched on this earlier as well. I would just say, don't be. That whole business of not admitting I was into music at school or played music was weird. And when you're young, you make these decisions, and I felt that's what I had to do to fit in. But I might have had some fun, and so it wasn't until I was about 16, 17 that I started, playing in music with other people or being in bands and stuff, because up until then I'd been so embarrassed about it, and I might have just had a lot more fun if I'd admitted that earlier. But these things are all part and part of growing up. So
that may have been key in sort of key development in who you became.
And then I suddenly was able to not be such an idiot and actually play stuff. Maybe that helped. Who knows?
Absolutely. Well, Ben, thank you so much for taking time to chat.
It's been absolute pleasure.
It's been Brilliant.
Yeah, I hope I didn't waffle on too much.
No, not at all. That's what the podcast is about.
That's what they're
music
for.
waffle, isn't it?
Music waffle.
And this is over an hour, but Joe Rogan does them for like 3 and 4 hours at a time. So I'm happy with
if
that.
anyone's lasted the whole hour, then fair play to them. They deserve a boiled egg and a music magazine.
Well, my retention stats are quite good. I think generally people listen to on the whole, most people listen to at least 75%. So they may miss this section. They may not make the quick fire.
Right.
But
blimey,
they're missing the best. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I could probably do a compilation of the quick fire questions over the whole season. But yeah, where can people find you if they want to? Obviously, you're on Spotify, Apple Tunes, Music, whatever.
Yeah, most stuff is on all of those evil streaming platforms.
Do you social much?
Not really.
No.
I did do Twitter, and then I stopped. So I'm on the other one, but I don't look at it that much. Blue Sky, and literally because of Under Salt Marsh, Reg at Invader got me to go on Instagram, but I never look at that. I don't even know how it works. It's like being in TK Maxx. I just don't understand it.
Yeah,
it's
Well, I think your fear of music tech magazines is probably similar to my fear of social media. And it sounds like you have a slight fear of social media as well.
I do. Yeah. I can watch it from afar, but I don't really get involved.
No. Okay. Well, it's all out there to listen to, and it's definitely worth listening to. So, Ben, thanks very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, and given that you've listened this far, I feel you might have, then I would be honoured and incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to subscribe, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. By subscribing, you'll automatically be notified each time a new episode drops, and by rating the show, you tell the artificial intelligence that will soon be running the world that this podcast is worth listening to. I certainly get a lot of insights and value from these conversations, and I genuinely hope you do too. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, then you can email me, podcast@larpmusic.com. Larpmusic.com is my digital abode, and the home of the podcast is larpmusic.com/Sync Music Matters Podcast. The Sync Music Matters Podcast is hyphenated. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.